right. So, hey, everybody. We are here with JB Smiley. How are you today?
I'm well.
So, can you tell us a little bit about you
Okay.
in general and then also the office that you were running for and the office that you hold?
Okay, so JB Smiley, native Memphian, someone who just intimately or genuinely just tries to find ways to get myself into the mix of trying to put people in a better position. I'm a lawyer by trade, currently serve on the Memphis City Council. So that means I represent about half the city of Memphis, about 325,000 people. I think the past 10 months or so, I was running to be governor of the great state of Tennessee.
Okay. And who do you endorse now?
Oh, absolutely. You'll find out a little bit later today. But what I will tell you is it will not be Governor Billy. He's an absolute disaster, failed policy after failed policy. And to be honest with you, I don't think he gives a damn about people.
Yeah.
So can never support someone like that.
So I guess let's just jump right into it
Okay.
then with some of the areas of opportunity you see with his leadership and failures in his leadership and how we think perhaps a Democratic governor can do better.
Well, I think the start is where you start when you think about how inept this current governor is. Just look at the things that he did not take a position on. When we think about criminalizing homelessness, he said he had a problem with the bill, but when the bill came to on his desk, he did not do anything. He did not veto the bill. He allowed it to become law. The same thing that happened with the Truth in Sentencing bill. He did not do anything. He saw it on his desk. He said there was problems with the bill. He did not veto it. He allowed it to become law. With that type of lack of courage, with that type of just gross disregard for people, you can't serve anyone well, except when it comes to the big donors and the wealthy political elite. He does everything he can to put them in a better position, but never working class people.
Okay, and what is the truth in sentencing bill?
The Truth in Sentencing bill is basically, and I think it's basically a bill that leads to more bodies in the beds of private prisons. It's not about putting people in a better position. It's about how we can put more bodies in these private prisons so that we can positively affect their bottom line.
Okay, and what percentage of prisons in the state of Tennessee are private?
I wish I knew that number. But if you just look
Roundabout?
roundabout, probably the majority of those prisons.
Majority.
The majority.
And the other thing that he was referring to is something, a bill that was passed that says that if if an unhoused person is in a public place at all, is it what are the
Sleeping on
stipulations?
public property.
Sleeping on public property, which where are people who are unhoused supposed to go? If they're sleeping on public property, it is a felony. So that goes into the same bottom line as the
Yes,
privatized
private prisons. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we just look at those type of laws. They don't do anything to put people in a better position. Way that my father would say, he'd say, our job is to help people when they're at their lowest.
Right.
This bill is essentially kicking people when they're at their lowest. That's not the type of laws we need in this state.
Right. And he also signed this trigger ban. What is the name of this abortion trigger ban bill? Is it just called the trigger ban bill?
That's what I would call it. I would
Okay.
call the abortion bills the Human Life Protection Act.
Human Life Protection
Something
Act,
like
which
that.
is not the heartbeat bill, which a lot of people are referring to it as. The heartbeat bill was already a thing. Like
It's already a thing. Well,
heartbeat
it
bill
used to be a
is
thing.
it used to be a thing. The heartbeat bill's been around for what, 30 days, 60
Yeah.
days? That said that after 6 weeks an abortion is illegal, which who knows they're pregnant before 6 weeks. It's not a lot of people. Okay, so he did the same thing with this new bill where up until today, other people who are behind this bill are going on the news and the Republican news stations are saying there's an exception for life of the mother. There is not an exception for life of the mother.
That's not a thing. That's fictitious, to be honest with you. The way that the law reads, it says it's a felony for anyone who attempts to perform or performs an abortion.
Right.
Period.
Right.
There is no exceptions carved out in the law. However, I think what people want to do is they try to call affirmative defense an exception. They're two completely different things.
Right.
One is prior to criminal prosecution, and one is after criminal prosecution.
Right.
Affirmative defense comes after prosecution, which means you have to find someone like me who's a lawyer, pay a significant amount of money, hire the lawyer to then put forth an affirmative defense, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. So just to put that in layman's terms, essentially what we're saying is No matter the circumstance, if you perform an abortion at any time in the state of Tennessee right now, you are charged with the felony, both the doctor and the mother. Affirmative defense means that the doctor can then go to court and try not to get said felony, but there are no exceptions. By definition, exception means exception to the rule. It's not an exception if I have to go prove that I'm not guilty and that my life was in danger, and a doctor has to do the same thing. To take it a step further, the issue is that a lot of doctors are going to shy away from doing it at all out of fear of being prosecuted.
Absolutely. So if you look at the language of the law, when you talk about the affirmative defense, it's pretty lengthy, the process that the doctor would have to take to say, hold up, here's the reasons why I know for sure this would keep the mother alive. And you have to go get another physician to agree to it. You have to sign a written statement. And you're not going to take that, that risk or bear that burden if you can simply avoid going through this criminal prosecution by simply not performing that abortion. Our General Assembly was very specific when they drafted this law that way because they wanted to they made it their mission to ban abortions in the state of Tennessee. And I think it's pretty hypocritical when we look at, our General Assembly. They're made up mostly men. Sorry, all guys. But you talk about folks who don't understand reproductive health, folks who don't have an education when it comes to medical health care, describing or implementing laws that have a negative impact on women, negative impact on anyone who can give birth. It's not their position. They need to accept the absolute fact that women should have, and it is an absolute right for women to make decisions regarding their bodies.
Right. So how long do you think that something like this is going to stand until we vote in November?
Well, I would love to be that optimistic, but the way that voter turnout is going in the state of Tennessee, we're probably looking at being in this situation, if I could be very direct with you, probably for another 4 years. Because what has to happen? Millennials, Generation Z have to get off their ass, understand that this negatively impacts every person who calls the state home. It affects more so than the wealthy because they can get in a car, take a plane to a neighboring state that does not have these regressive abortion laws in place, and they'll be just fine. But working class people, poor, marginalized folks, they're going to experience what I believe to be a complete takeover of all rights that we have. I think this is just the beginning of it all. Mm-hmm. We have to do everything in our power. So hopefully we're organizing. Hopefully we're telling everybody to vote for the Democratic nominee for governor, because this governor doesn't care about people. This General Assembly does not care about people. We have a few warriors up there fighting for our individual rights, but for the large part, that General Assembly, they're not listening to us. They will listen to us when we start going to the polls and voting. So hopefully everyone who's hear this, you're going to the polls in November and you're voting for the Democratic candidate for governor. You're voting for the Democratic candidates all up and down the ticket because it's absolutely important for us to do just that.
So what do you see within the next 4 years? What else do you think is under threat? Because I know Biden signed something to protect gay marriage. So what else are we looking at here?
I think if we go back to the Roe versus Wade decision, Justice Clarence Thomas essentially told us what he wanted to do.
Yeah, he did.
He said, here's all the things that we should look at. But shortly thereafter, there was a United States senator who also talked about we need to take a look at Plessy versus the Board of Education, potentially talk about segregating schools again. I think we're headed that direction. Talk about banning contraceptives. We're heading that direction. Mm-hmm. They're interjecting their religious beliefs into a world, into politics, and we should not be doing that.
Oh my God. Could you imagine segregating schools?
Yes, I can. I live in the city of Memphis. And when we, quick history. So in 2011 or so, we had two school systems. We had the Memphis City school systems and the Shelby County school systems. Memphis City school systems was predominantly black. Shelby County school systems was diverse. When the city of Memphis relinquished their school system charter, the school systems merged. So at this point, you have an extremely diverse school system. Shortly thereafter, the surrounding school districts, which were predominantly white, said, you know what, we don't want to be a part of this integrated school system, this extremely diverse school system. So they created separate school systems. So those separate school systems now are predominantly white because they don't want to be a part of this diverse school system. So in certain places we're heading that direction, but our government, our federal government, our state government should not be taking an active role into segregating schools, because there's separate but equal. That's not a thing.
No,
It's
it is
not a
not a
thing.
thing.
It's not a thing.
It's not a thing. So in order to not discourage people from
Okay.
voting, because I don't want them to think even if they vote Democrat, we're just in for shit. Is there any possibility that if we get Jason Martin is his name,
Yes,
correct?
Jason Martin.
If we can get Jason Martin in office, is he able to, like, how long is someone in a position like that before they're able to reverse certain things?
Okay.
Or how does any of that work?
So what I often do when I talk about, the role of governments in politics, I talk specifically about the power of the governor, the power of the General Assembly. So the governor's role is to enforce the laws that are created. What a governor can do, he can use his platform, he can use his influence to potentially influence the General Assembly to vote a particular way. So the governor alone is not going to be able to reverse these laws, what I believe to be misogynistic laws. He cannot do that alone. What he will need is a General Assembly, state reps, state senators to implement laws, to pass laws that he can get behind. And that's why I tell people, you have to vote down the ballot. You can't just vote for the governor or vote against Bill Lee and think you're done. No, you have to find your state rep that identifies like you, that believes like you. You have to vote for that state rep as well. And I really don't tell people to just vote because, vote Democrat just because you're voting Democrat. I want people to make informed decisions. But at this point, we can afford to say, hold on, let me go research this.
Right.
We have to vote down the ballot because we are in a pivotal point. We need a paradigm shift. And the only way we can get ourselves in that position where we have people voting in our best interest, we need to vote down the ballot, to all Democrats, down the ballot, until we come to a point where our freedoms are protected. Because Clarence Thomas told us, sitting on the Supreme Court, who has a lifetime appointment, can never go home until he decides to go home.
Right.
He told us contraceptives are at risk.
And they're already doing weird shit at a lot of these places.
Absolutely.
Like, I understand that perhaps legally it's okay, but I think that everybody who offers these services is in extreme fear right now. So I know that, like, some of my friends are trying to get their IUDs replaced and they're having trouble.
Absolutely.
They're having to find places that are willing to do it. And that is, before a law even becomes a law, when there's so much threat, people are bullied into submission.
Absolutely. They know, when you deal with larger companies, they know what's coming down the pipeline.
So they start telling their physicians no.
Let's not worry about that. We don't want to, put these out in circulation when we know a law is potentially coming. When this General Assembly meets again, you may see something about contraceptions. You may see other extreme laws. This is just the beginning. That's why we have to fight back. And we don't fight back by posting only on social media, going on Twitter rants or Facebook. We fight back by going to the polls and voting for people who believe like us, who understand that bodily autonomy is a real thing. We can't just talk about bodily autonomy when it comes to wearing masks. Bodily autonomy also comes to the right to access abortion.
Yeah, it does. It really does. So one thing that I spoke to Gloria about when it comes to the General Assembly, which is the representatives.
She's one of our freedom fighters as well.
Yes, we love Gloria Johnson. But one of the things we spoke about is gerrymandering, because we know I ask stupid questions here because I don't understand politics completely, but like with gerrymandering, that's the thing where they go and they adjust the districts. Are there Democratic representatives in those districts once they're gerrymandered, or is it like, how, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, so sometimes, but there's two terms that you have to know when you deal with gerrymandering. One is cracking and one is packing. Cracking is, let's say we have a Democratic stronghold in a district. Cracking, what they do is they're breaking that district up and splitting the Democratic stronghold so you can dilute the Democratic vote and create Republican districts. Okay. And you have packing, meaning I want to create a stronger district where the vote is concentrated. So I put everybody in one district so that I can make sure that I have, whatever the particular result. Since Republicans have been in power, they have been packing and cracking throughout the state of Tennessee. So when they, gerrymander lines, think about this. Nashville has had a Democratic congressperson for a very long time. when they finish gerrymandering those lines, is hopefully Senator Heidi Campbell wins her congressional seat. Hopefully Odessa Kelly wins her congressional seat. But the way they created the lines, all those congressional districts are favored to be Republican. But we have, a responsibility to go to the polls in November, because if we don't, we will lose the last few Democratic representatives we have.
What do we have? 23 to 76 is the ratio right now?
Right now. And it's not looking good the way they drew those lines. But what I'm inspired about, the candidates that are running, they're running campaigns that are getting people excited. So there's still hope. So don't lose hope, because I'm telling you, these things are problematic. Be inspired, be encouraged, say,
Right.
There's work to be done. And, what I tell people all the time is we can turn the state blue, and it starts with each and every one of us. We have to go to the doors.
Yeah.
We have to talk to our friends. I know every millennial that I know knows at least 2 or 3 people that won't vote.
Right.
And that's problematic.
It's
and the largest, huge problem. And the largest voting block, if we actually went to the polls, are millennials. But we have to go to the polls.
We have to go to the polls, and we have to, especially in those more rural areas where your parents are going to go vote, first try to educate them and then go vote as well. Because that's a thing, like there were many years of my life I didn't vote. I didn't understand the importance of it. And only now am I like, oh shit. Oh, now we're in trouble. And
Absolutely.
I need to do my best to try and reverse some of this.
Yeah, we are in trouble. Like literally, we're in a state of emergency. And literally we are. If we look at, the freedoms that we have are being rolled back. Look at how we're attacking teachers, attacking librarians, defunding public education. If we look at these things that we thought were solidified in the law 50 years ago are being taken away from us.
Yeah.
And at some point, they're going to come for same-sex marriage. Like, these are things that our General Assembly, for some reason,
they're
obsessed with taking away these things.
Because they don't understand the Bible, and they've misconstrued. And I'm speaking for myself. I'm not standing on it. You can't read, clearly. It goes back so much deeper, but there have been so many translations of that text that there's a there's a good chance that, I get so upset about this, there's a good chance that by the time it made it over here to the King James Version, that there's been manipulation so that a group of people in power can continue to be in power. If you don't have the ability to free think enough to understand that having dominion over other people is not godly, then you have got to figure your shit out.
And even Jesus gave people free will. Simple as that. Jesus is love. Jesus gave people free will. And if you believe in the Bible, you believe in Jesus, and if Jesus is your savior, you should understand people should have free will. What we're doing in our politics today is saying we're going to take away their free will because we believe a certain way. That's not what we should be doing. And
that's not godly. So all of you that are supporting it, thinking that you're aligning yourself with the guy in sandals, Sky Daddy, you're doing it wrong. This is not even what's in the Bible. So we've got to get to a place, as someone who does believe in God, but maybe just believes that God represents a little bit different, we've got to get on the same page about this, because it is detrimental to society. And if we get to this place where everybody is controlled, eventually those same people who are saying no abortions and all this stuff, eventually you're next. Because you're not the 1%. So you will also fall victim to this kind of dominion if you give it long enough. So if you can't care for anybody else, care for yourself, which I know you do. Care for yourself enough not to allow dominion to happen across the board.
I think when I just look at where we are as a society, I think we get so caught up in, and this is politicians. Politicians get so caught up in trying to target a community that they feel like that will vote for them,
right?
And they sometimes lose track of what the role of government is. And the role of government is really simple. I can ask 1,000 people the role of government, probably give me different answers, but the role of government is this: to provide for the general welfare of its people. And if we keep that in mind when we're passing laws, we will do whatever it takes to put people in a better position. That's our job. That's the responsibility of government. And for the past several years or so in Tennessee, we have lost track of that. We spend so much time trying to divide as opposed to focusing on the issues that actually put people in a better position. And those are the issues we need to focus on. Those are the issues we can unite around. And those are the issues that make life better for people.
So, one thing I wanted to get into that I spoke to Gloria about is that it is my understanding that we are in a place where one of the big pots of money that's left is privatizing education. They've already privatized all the other sectors. So, the last thing is education. So, can you kind of just talk about your stance on that, the Democratic stance on that, and what that really means?
There's a lot of things that go with privatizing education. So first of all, I'm for fully funding public schools. Okay. I'm gonna tell you the reason. If we look at, how do we provide for the most children and put the most children in the best position? We fund public schools. Mm-hmm. And, pursuant to our constitution in the state, it's the state's responsibility to fund public schools, not to fund private entities. But look at this. So this started with the voucher bill. The voucher bill was a bill that would allow public dollars to go to private schools to fund those private educations of children. Mm-hmm. All right. It failed in the courts twice, and recently it was upheld, and it's going to ultimately fail in the courts. Our current governor understands that. So what he did is he went back to the drawing board. How can I fund private schools and no one knows what I'm doing? So he said, let me restructure this 30-year-old funding formula called the BEP, now called TISA. Mm-hmm. And what happens in the current formula, it allows the public dollars to follow the students. And what I always ask people when we look at this formula, what happens when the parents of those students decide to move their children to private schools? The dollars will follow, and the dollars will ultimately end up in private schools. Right now, what this governor is attempting to do, I know you've always seen all the commotion and all of the backlash around Hillsdale Charter School. Mm-hmm. Right now, this current governor wants to move public dollars into opening up 50 Hillsdale charter schools in the state. And, there's been speculation that he wants to push it to 100. Even after the president of the institution, Dr. Arnn, stated teachers go to the dumbest parts of the dumbest colleges. He doesn't care. Even after, Democrats and Republicans both said this is not a good idea. This current governor doesn't care because what he understands and it's not about the people. It's about his future aspirations of running for president or becoming the vice presidential choice.
It's about his donors.
It's about his donors. It's about people who do not align with us, people who do not live in this state, people who could care less of the life we live in this state. And that's problematic. It should be concerning for every person who calls to stay home. Not just concerning, but enough for you to say, you know what? I have a role to play in this. Right. I have a role to play in the future that I want for my children. I have a role to play in the future that I want for myself. Mm-hmm. You can make it deeply personal like that because it's true. If we do not do something, we will have hell to pay in the next 4 years.
Who owns all these Hillsdale? Like, who's benefiting if we get all these charter schools?
Politicians and their boards. The people who invest in their companies. It's not private schools and private prisons. These institutions should be about, if you're talking about private prisons, you should be talking about rehabilitation. Mm-hmm. How do you put people in a better position once they pay their debt to society? Right. If you're talking about private schools, you should be talking about getting the best education for the children. The problem is they're for profit. Mm-hmm. When you're talking about for profit things, there's always there's always a piece of it where the only thing that really matters is that bottom line. How do we make more money? We deal with for-profit charter schools or for-profit private schools. Ultimately, what happens is, let's say you have a child who talks way too much, like me. So I talk way too much in
Both of
school.
us.
And, I would get S's and N's in conduct. Let's say I go to a charter school, private school, and get kicked out because I talk too much. But I make good grades, but I get kicked out. What happens is those dollars stay at the private school, stay at the charter school, and I ultimately have to go back to that public school, which by our Constitution is obligated to take me in anyway because they have to provide for my education. But the money never makes it. So I'm here in this institution, although the money that's supposed to take care or pay for my institution, my education never follows me back to the public school. These are just some of the loopholes and some of the reasons that it's problematic to be doing anything with our public dollars other than supporting our institutions that are constitutionally required to be provided for by our state.
So is it out of the realm of possibility that the same people that are donating to people like Bill Lee are the same people that own the prisons, which he benefits by passing laws, are the same people that own the private and charter education that also donate to him, which is why he's incentivized to pass bills?
Absolutely. And so yes, 1,000 times yes. If you just look at, some of the financial disclosures of some of the folks who are running for office, I talk about somebody from my hometown that serves on the council with me. If we look at our financial disclosures, we have to disclose, what companies we have interest in. We literally have someone on our council who was in the past supported by CoreCivic. CoreCivic is the entity that owns our private prisons, that runs our private prisons. He was not only supported by them, he also owns a share or investing in that company. That goes down the line or up the ladder across the board. And that's why I spend a lot of time talking about, we have a problem in the state, not just with who's making financial contributions, but also a problem in the state with lobbyists. I think one of the biggest problems that we have in our politics is our elected officials don't read everything that goes before them.
Right.
What happens is a lobbying firm drafts a bill, say, hey, this is really good for your community. Oh, yeah. Also, if you look at your disclosure, for sure I sent you, we maxed out to your campaign.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good bill. Okay, great. I'm going to propose it at the next meeting. And they go in, they propose this bill that they did not read, and they trust the word of a lobbyist who also has a financial stake if this bill gets passed, and the bill gets passed. And then guess what? That company or that entity, the lobbying firm makes money. The entity they're supporting ultimately makes money because this bill passed. And I think that's how we had Truth in Sentencing bill. CoreCivic has a lobbying firm draft this bill. And it goes on and on and on. If we look at, the reason we don't have, we're not required to have permits when we carry firearms. Look at what happened. NRA was involved. There was a poll taken that said about 60% of Tennesseans were against permitless carry. Our governor doesn't care. He goes to the gun manufacturing plant, calls a press conference, sits down, and signs the bill into law because ultimately the people who support him financially in terms of his political contributions is the very same company that will benefit financially if the permitless carry law passed. And it did. And it benefited them financially because gun sales went up. The number of people carrying firearms went up. And also the number of deaths, the violent crimes also went up. But who cares about that?
Well, that's more people in prison. So that's great.
That's
money on the
back
end.
There you go. You got it.
Money on the back end.
There you go. You got it.
Got it. So it's dire that we understand that whether you are Republican or Democrat or somewhere in the middle, by voting for people like this, regardless of what they tell you their platform's going to be, look at what they've actually done in their political history. By voting for these people, you are feeding more money into a small group of people that none of us are a part of. Yep. So there is no winning. I understand that some of you have different, there are things, I don't want my taxes to be raised, to be fair. I don't. I already don't have any money. But it's so much bigger than that. And I think that's what we need to get to is there is like a group of, there's people in power and it is, the money's just going around in a circle. And none of it is going to any of us, including all the people in the rural parts of Tennessee that are voting Republican. You guys aren't benefiting from this.
The Republican Party spends so much time attempting to divide people
Yes.
because they want to keep a stronghold on this state. And, I had a conversation with a rural voter, and we were just talking about healthcare. And he essentially said, I don't want that free stuff. And I said, well, it's not really free. He said, what do you mean? I said, let me ask you this question. Who's your state representative? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, okay. Well, did you know your tax dollars? And I said, well, does your state representative have healthcare? He said, well, I would think so. And I said, well, did you know that your tax dollars pay for your state representative's healthcare? He said, well, I didn't think about that like that. And I said, well, did you know those same tax dollars that you pay also obligates you to get healthcare as well? He said, well, I don't have it. And I said, I'm going to tell you why. Because the same state representative that you vote for or that you pay for their healthcare insurance, every General Assembly, when it comes to expand Medicaid to receive healthcare for everyone who provides, votes no. So you don't have healthcare because that state representative who has healthcare because of you won't give it to you. So I didn't think of it like that. These policies that are in place, they do not benefit anyone who calls the state home.
No.
But they spend so much time dealing with these national issues that we lose track of what matters to us.
Right.
People in this state essentially want the same thing, no matter where they are, whether they're in an urban center or whether they're in a rural community. They want to make a good, decent living.
Yeah.
They want to provide for their family. They want a good education for their children. And when they retire, they want to retire with a dignity and a peace of mind. But these policies do not put us in a better position. If we look at where we are on wages, we had the same minimum wage for a very long time. Over 50 years, had the same minimum wage.
That's insane.
The same minimum wage. Inflation has increased every year. When minimum wage was first set, that minimum wage was a living wage.
Right.
Right now, the folks do not want to give us a living wage because it does not benefit the people who are in the position to financially support campaigns, because it would hurt their bottom line.
I hope y'all are seeing a pattern. I hope.
And if you haven't seen the pattern, I'm going to be very direct. Follow the money. Follow the big donors. And if a big donor is consistently supporting a particular candidate because they vote a certain way, you have to ask yourself, is that candidate corrupt?
So one thing that I haven't said, that I know I'm going to get shit for, but I don't care, is that I moved here from Los Angeles, born and raised in Texas. Before you guys attack me, I'm Southern. But I lived in LA for a number of years. I moved to Nashville 2 years ago, and I have yet to switch my ID, my driver's license, over to Tennessee, because upon moving here, I knew that these bills were going to be passed in terms of my rights to healthcare and abortion. So even though I am a privileged white woman, I am afraid to register to vote here and change my license over to here because I now cannot get health care here. And I think that is really, really insane. And I just happened to luck out and not be pulled over yet or get a ticket yet because I still have like 2020 vehicle registration on my car. Nobody come for me.
As her new lawyer, she needs to confirm or deny that.
But it's the truth. I'm in this position where, thank God, I'm privileged enough for right now to be able to get on a plane and go somewhere if I have to do something. But why are we in this position at all?
We are in this position because, if we just look at, the number of people we have moving in. So first of all, let me tell you this. You're not alone. Yeah. You're not the only person who is in this situation, because we have a number of students who move in to go to, whether they're going to UT, whether they're going to Fisk, whether they're going to the various number of schools we have, who just don't change over because they want access to something they cannot get in the state. But we also have people who have been very vocal about, look, I'm about to change. I'm about to move outside of the state because of our repressive and our, extremely, bad laws that are currently being implemented. So you're not alone, but we're in this place because we haven't done a good job. And I'm talking about, Democrats now. We haven't done a good job of going into communities of young people saying, look, We need to tell you what's about to happen. Here's the issues. Here's the reason you need to go vote. But not only do you need to go vote, we're going to do a better job of speaking to the things that matter to you. Like we have to use TikTok because a lot of people are using TikTok. We have to find other ways to get the message out. And we haven't done a good job with that.
Right. And I know that I think, Owen, you said it's 110 people a day are moving here from other places. Nashville is a growing city. And I think that a lot of people that move here from a place that's more democratic, LA, New York, whatever, we move here and we're somewhat complacent because the laws don't necessarily apply to us at this time. We're not technically residents of Tennessee. But I think that if we're going to move to a place like this, we have to take responsibility for the things that matter, because if not us, then our children, like a lot of us are buying homes here. A lot of us are putting money into this community. We need to be mindful of where our money goes. And I think that that's a dangerous part of Western society as a whole, is a lot of us are in this mindset of like, well, if it doesn't directly affect me, it's not my problem. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier when I was hyped the fuck up. It will be your problem eventually. And we have to be proactive. The same way you're proactive about whatever it is you care about in your personal life or your work career, we have to be proactive about our leadership, because we are going to ruin the planet, and then they're going to get on their spaceship and leave, and we're going to be fucked.
Well, we're essentially fucked right now. So let me
Yeah,
be honest.
really
we're
fucked.
there now.
Really
but,
fucked.
You know, I always go back to this. If, you know, we're in Nashville today, and I'm from Memphis. Mm-hmm. If Nashville, the young folks in Nashville and the left-leaning people in Nashville decided to really care, when I mean really care, is doing more than just voting yourself and saying, hey, I've done my job. It's, let me tell my friends, let me go into my community. If we decided to care, because I think in Shelby County, it was the people who voted in the August election was about 23 to 25%. I'm sure Nashville was somewhere the same. If we decided to vote at a rate of about 40%, we're talking about a state that's purple. That's crazy. Yeah. And it's, you know, slight increases in two of the largest cities in the state, just slight increases. Well, we went across the board and increased voter participation at about a 15% clip. You're talking about a purple state. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, I truly believe this, and some people disagree with me. I do not believe the state of Tennessee is red. You can't convince me.
I don't believe it either.
You can't convince me the state of Tennessee is red. If you look at where things were when Brett is in here, the number of people who voted, the participation was higher. Mm-hmm. You get more people involved in the political process and voting, get more people excited about what's happening, you're going to have a purple state. And, you know, I think that's where Tennessee is. Mm-hmm. Tennessee is a non-voting state. We're bottom 40s in voter participation, bottom 40s in voter turnout. So this is not just people who are registered to vote. We're bottom in the people who actually turn out to vote. We're among the worst in the country. Mm-hmm. And if we have to significantly improve that. And I think if we put a plan in place from between now and the next 2 to 4 years, you're talking about us being in the same position as Georgia. Georgia and Tennessee were here. They were almost identical in the way that we were voting about 4 years ago. But the difference is they put a plan in place. And now look at where they are. They're heading in a more progressive direction, right. A direction that favors people rather than big companies.
Right. So again, voting is incredibly important. I am going to switch my license over because I would be a hypocrite if I didn't.
And she gives a damn about people.
Yes. Yeah, clearly. I give a shit, and I give a shit about my rights and the rights of other people. And I truly do believe that unless healthcare is free, we really should not have some of the conversations we're having about not allowing people access to certain things, because I still have to fucking pay for it if I need to go get something done, regardless of what it is, which is crazy.
You know, in this state, which is crazy that, you know, we're dealing with an abortion ban, but, you know, a large part of Tennessee, there's maternity deserts. When people don't have access to OBGYNs, when people don't have access to good maternal health care.
Really?
There's a large percentage of Tennesseans that live in maternity deserts, but they don't have access to. So what do you think? What do you expect women to do? Like, what do you expect childbearing people to do? when you're banning abortion. I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. You're gonna see a lot of more accidental deaths. You're gonna see a lot more people taking abortion into their own hands because the doctors cannot or will not perform it because they're scared. And you're gonna see the number of people who commit suicide significantly increase just because our politicians believe a certain way.
Right. And that also, correct me if I'm wrong, affirmative defense does not include mental health of the mother.
No, it actually
Doesn't.
it does all. So the law, what the law says is this: if you go down, you keep reading the law, it specifically says that's not a thing.
Right.
Like
So
it says,
life of the mother.
it says it's not a thing. Mental health, we're
Is
not
not one
taking
of
this
them.
into consideration.
What's the other one? There's mental health and there's another one. It's
I
if
have
the
to
mother
pull it up.
might
Commit suicide.
harm herself, or there's something else
Yeah,
too.
so harm yourself, commit suicide. I have to read the text of the bill again,
Yeah.
but
But that's the thing. It's so specific that even if it were an exception, which it's not, you're still looking at only when she is life or death physically from ectopic pregnancy or whatever. That's the only time that our life is important.
so you cannot just say, the doctor cannot just say, here's what it was. It was a matter of life and death.
Right.
The doctor has to prove it.
In court.
And proving it, there's a high
Hire an
burden.
attorney, right?
Yes, you have to prove it, and it's a very high burden to prove. It's not something that's simple. Yeah. It's almost, trying not to be a lawyer today. It almost rises to the level of strict liability, meaning if you do it, it's automatically over. Right. It's almost there. It's knocking on the door of strict liability, which is egregious, to be honest with you. Right. This one particular county, it was a pretty large event. We go there and speak, and I end up speaking to the party chair. He said, "And this is probably the biggest meeting we had in X amount of years," because people start to feel like it was okay to be themselves. Like you can be yourself, and the longer you're yourself, the more you're yourself, authentically yourself. People will come around and say, "Okay, I believe this way too, but I didn't know there was someone else, so I can freely tell you how I feel." Yeah. Like we have to continue showing up in these spaces. Yeah. We can't just show up during election year. We can't just show up when it's convenient for us. We have to consistently show up. Like a week ago, I agreed to go speak at this dinner, and it's 5 hours from my hometown, and I'm not running for office right now, but I'm showing up because I know people need to see me there in presence. Absolutely.
And that's the thing too. Like I've reached out to quite a few politicians on the other side of the coin because I'm not trying to alienate Republicans. There are plenty of Republicans I know and love. I would like to educate everybody a little bit more on what's happening because we are more like-minded than we're realizing, because we're using political parties to separate each other. And there are extremists on both sides. It's just that the far-right extremists have the power currently. Yeah. So it seems worse than it is. But, I mean, well, it is horrible. They're passing laws. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not, I think it was something like 70% of Tennesseans wanted abortion to stay legal and 80% want cannabis to be legal.
First of all, I feel like almost everyone wants cannabis to be legal.
But it still isn't.
It still isn't. I mean, but let's get back to, if you follow the money, cannabis will be legalized in the state of Tennessee. Yeah. But it will only come after the people who are making money realize how they could put institutions in place where they can essentially have a monopoly on the business. Right. If you look at almost everything that happens in the state, ultimately comes down to, the bottom line, the profit, the dollar. Yeah. And that's problematic. It should never be about that. It should be, okay, let's do this because it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm.
And there's still so much opportunity for profit without fucking over people in the process. And that's where, like, the American dream is a little warped because it just is like trample on everybody else. That's how we got this country. That's how we built this country, is go hurt others to maintain power. You don't have to do that. There is a way to make this work for everybody, but we have to vote for the correct leadership in order to have a sustainable environment where we can try to explore helping everybody in the process, even the people who are, well, ignorant. We'll get you there. But it's when people feel backed into a corner that they get the way they're getting now. And we're all backed into a corner. I feel backed into a corner.
Being one of the more progressive candidates out here, and I feel like I'm back in the corner sometimes.
Yeah.
But what I think I had the decision that I had to make is was I going to enter this political space authentically as JB Smiley, or was I going to be caught in what I would consider the political whirlwind where you just kind of get sucked in and going along to get along so that you can advance your career. And I ultimately made the decision. I'm going to be JB Smiley everywhere I go. Either you're going to like it, you're going to love it, or you may not like me all the time, but it's okay. I mean, I want people to know who I am and say, okay, JB believes this. He's going to stand for this, and he will curse a little bit here and there, and you're going to get me, but you're going to get JB every single time. And I think the problem that we find ourselves making with our elected officials, I'm talking about politicians now, is that so many politicians get caught up in this whirlwind of going along to get along. I'm going to say this because that's what everyone else is saying. If you don't believe their way, say it, and the people will decide ultimately whether they agree with you or they don't. But if you get caught in this political whirlwind, we don't get change. Yeah. We just get more of the same. And I firmly believe that people want change, not more of the same. So I'm going to be authentically JB Smiley everywhere I go.
That's what we need to be paying attention to when we're choosing leadership, is people that are not afraid to be bold, regardless of political party. Like, put that aside. There's a connection between the leadership right now and them being cowards who want to make money. And the opportunity we have is to choose people, which is why so many of you loved Trump, because he said it like it was. Now, he's not a viable option, and we all know why at this point, hopefully. Well, some of us don't, but that's fine. He's not a viable option, but take that energy and put it with a candidate who's mentally sound, and it's great. It's great. Put it with a candidate who wasn't born into extreme wealth, and it's great. We want someone bold who is also mentally sound. Yeah. So to close it out, is there anything you want to say to the people?
Absolutely. I look directly into the camera now. I think a lot of times we spend so much time expecting politicians to do all the work themselves. But the very truth of the matter is this: we all have a role to play in this democracy that we want. We want a democracy that supports our rights. We want a democracy that gives us the ability to scale up our small businesses. We want a democracy that truly supports people. We want a democracy that affirms you no matter how you identify or who you love. If that's the democracy you want, you have to work for it. You have to put in the time. You have to talk to people. You have to be unapologetically yourself everywhere you go. Don't dial it back, but be all of you everywhere you go. And if you do that, we will get to a place in this state that truly values us no matter where we live. But it takes you. You have to put in the work. You can't expect a politician to know how you're thinking if you're not talking to them. You can't expect someone sitting in elected office to understand your deep held feelings about a certain issue if you're afraid to put it out. Put it out. Let people know how you feel. Tell your friends, tell your families. But most importantly, you have to vote. That's your power. Your power to change the laws in this state comes with you going to the polls and voting. And always, you can turn this state blue, and it starts with you.
Oh, that's cute. I love that. And also, for myself, all of the country musicians that I know that are silent and complicit, you have got to do better. You have got to stop living in fear. You have people that hang on every word. This doesn't even go for just country, but we're speaking about Tennessee right now. You have people that follow everything you do. So the rhetoric that is abusive and that is bigotry, you can't. Even if you believe something different, this cannot be how we go into our future here in country music. We need more Maren Morrises. We need more Cassidy Popes. We need people who are willing to speak up, even if no one in country journalism will write about my music because of it. Thank you. Just make me look skinny, thick, and perfect and 23 years old, and that's fine. La, 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 la.